Welcome back, everyone, once again to the Football Goons podcast. This week, we're taking our very first initial look at the 2018 fantasy football season. Now, if we're being honest about it, we've probably individually been peeking ahead, making references over the past couple weeks to it, but we're really getting full-fledged into it at this point. And, that's right. I'm calling it out right now. Our way too early fantasy rankings are now available at footballgoons.com. You could check them out there. You could filter them. You could sort them, see where we individually stand, where we collectively stand, footballgoons.com. Tonight, we'll discuss the biggest discrepancies and surprises at each position. And most likely, we're going to argue quite a bit. That's kind of what we do when we're passionate about things. So for those of you watching live on YouTube, you can feel free to join in the conversation. Submit your questions and comments as we're going along, and we'll try to read as many as we can fit in here as we're moving along. As long as you're not going to ask us, something very obvious, because we're not going to touch on or spend a whole lot of time on the clear-cut number one guys. We're going to hash it out on those guys where we see differently. All right, so guys, just any opening thoughts here? How fast do you expect this to get to heated debate status?
I'm not planning on being real polite this evening. My son was as good as he's been, probably in 3 years today. His behavior was phenomenal. So I've got a lot of pent-up, unused anger. So I just have a lot to say about even though it's way too early, some of you guys are really stupid. So I think it'll go pretty quickly.
I think we'll get through the first question unscathed. And then by question 2, we're going to start arguing and fighting.
I don't think we're even getting through the first question.
I'm all jacked already. I'm mad now.
Yeah, right.
Well, let's get right into it here.
I couldn't even sell it.
Let's start at the quarterback position. All right. That's kind of where things are going to start discussion-wise. It's kind of where we tend to start thinking about things for fantasy as well. We're unanimous, numbers 1 through 3 right now. I'll give you our top 5 to start it out. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, unanimous 1 through 3. And then we've got Tom Brady at 4, Cam Newton at 5. So, we're not too crazy with how far we deviate anywhere in the top 5. Where we kind of get a little bit more interesting is at Drew Brees, who comes in at number 8 for us. We're 1.3 ranking spots apart, which is a pretty big point in the top 10 for us. So, we've got him as high as number 7 with myself and Deal. And then Miles has him as low as number 10. So that's kind of where I want to start out. So, Miles, is this driven by the Saints kind of going toward a run-heavy offense? And how much does the Mark Ingram suspension, the first 4 games now, alter that for you?
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, it's a ton to do with the difference in their offense that we just saw last year. And it's not, I tried really, really hard, and I think we all should as fantasy players and preparing for drafts and things of that nature, to not have such crazy recency bias that all you look at is last year, especially with a guy like Breeze, who's been a fantasy stud for over a decade. So that being said, this is one situation where I am going to look hard at last year because, number one, that was the first time since probably they won the Super Bowl that they were as stacked at running back as they were. And if you go back to that 2009 kind of season, they did run the ball a lot and they won. And then they started throwing the ball like crazy, and he's got back to back 5,000-yard seasons, and they're 7-9 every year. And then last year they went back to that run heavy offense. And in all fairness, they were one stupid play away from being in the NFC Championship. And I know I'm not alone in the room in saying they would have beat the Eagles, and I think they would have beat the Patriots. So when you're Sean Payton, you're seeing an opportunity that not only just worked like crazy for you to stay run heavy, but also gives a little bit more to the back end of Drew Brees' career where he's not throwing like crazy. He's not getting hit as much. He might be around for an extra year or two versus, 650 dropbacks. So, all that being said, I still have him as a QB1, and maybe part of this is last year was the first time I think I've ever owned him and it didn't go that well for me. So there's some personal bias in there, but I think honestly, it's just if you look at the names I have him ranked around, I'd rather have a couple of those guys ahead of him because of what they did last year with Ingram and Kamara. The Ingram thing does nothing for me. I'm not scared of that at all. It's not going to change them for the season. It's 4 games.
I'll touch on that because I have a stat right out of the gates. 2009, I agree they did run more, but he was number 2 in scoring. And if you would have taken the stats from that year, he would have been number 2 in scoring last season too. So he was number 10 last season. It was a drop off from the Drew Brees normal, but I just see it coming back, at least swinging back some. I didn't put him number 2, but I see it swinging back more to some of that. And the Ingram, it does alter a little bit for me because I think now that, Kamara gets those first 4 games scot-free by himself, it shows even though Ingram's good, he's not Alvin Kamara and the electricity that he has. Mark Ingram's not going to be phased out unless he, for some reason, gets traded, but he's going to keep getting the ball. He's a really good running back, which we've talked about in depth, but I do think it swings more in Kamara's favor. In 2016, Breeze was number 3, so I think he swings back closer to that. I'm not saying 3 or 2, but I met there in the middle at 7.
I think the reason just real quick, Rock, I think the reason I'll say Mark Ingram doesn't bother me at all is I could absolutely see Breeze first 4 weeks going back to more that 2015, 2016 thing. But when Ingram's back, it doesn't make any sense to me to not go back to what they just did last year. And I'm not going to draft a guy like Breeze, who might be QB3 after 4 weeks and then falls back behind ahead of a guy like Kirk Cousins, who I have ranked ahead, or Jared Goff, who I have ranked ahead, who I think are going to be a little more consistent. Right. If you're going to draft Breeze and then try to move him and sell high, then I'm on board with that. But to take him as QB5 or something or 6 is a little scary for me at this point.
Sell high. I love it when you talk dirty.
Here's the thing. One, I think Ingram has to play into it because without him in the lineup for the first 4 weeks, you're going to see at least a bump in those 4 weeks for his stats. The worst Drew Brees has finished in the last 10 years is 10th last season. So if he bumps up a little bit from 10th, he's higher than 10.
He's 6 or 7.
He's 6 or 7, which is where I have him. Two, the other thing is, I love that you said that you, like, the guys you have him ranked around, you have them a little higher. I think it's funny because I kind of went the opposite, and I kind of went with who do I trust more to do it again? Like, I don't know what Kirk Cousins is going to give me. I don't know if we're going to have a healthy Andrew Luck. So I rank them all together. But like, if you're gonna ask me, gun to my head, who I think is going to throw for 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns this season, Cousins, Luck, or Breeze?
Luck.
If any of you take anything other than Drew Brees, I think you're still silly.
Oh man,
you know what I mean? So like, if I'm ranking those 3 guys, I'm putting Breeze at the top of that list. Right.
Yeah, I kind of misspoke too because you do have him the highest of the group. I was looking at an older version that I had pulled up and I refreshed to the latest. You had him at number 6, so you're the highest of the group on him. Yep. So for me, honestly, I think that last year was kind of an outlier as far as his touchdowns go.
Anomaly.
I don't expect that he's going to be around that 23 touchdown mark, especially with that first 4 weeks to kind of get a jump start on maybe having to rely on him a little bit more. I heard an interesting conversation that I'm going to save for the running back part, but about what to expect over those first 4 weeks with the Saints. And it kind of swings in Drew Brees' favor. So is the team around him offensively better than it was last year? I don't know.
No, probably not.
Probably not, but I don't expect that he's only going to be in like that low 20s for the touchdown mark. So I think that would be enough to kind of keep him, right there in that number 7 region for me. So
for all the talk about like how much he dropped off, he was still a 4,300 yard passer. Now I know that's not 5,000 yards, but like where he really dipped was the touchdowns, and you can't bank on that year to year. He had a low year in touchdowns.
So let me ask you this. I mean, again, I'm not arguing against Drew Brees here.
Sure. No, we get that.
That's not my point. But okay, so yeah, he finished 10th last year, and let's say he finishes 7 this year because in the first 4 weeks he throws 16 touchdowns or 14 touchdowns, whatever it is. And then from weeks 5 to 16, he regresses back to what he was last year. Still very, very good. All right. But are you really that proud that the guy finished 7th instead of 10th, but your fantasy team only got the production from weeks 1 to 4? And then the rest of the season, you're dragging behind guys that have Andrew Luck or Deshaun Watson or those other guys again. I'm not willing to pay a little more just because he's going to end up with better numbers, but they were from weeks 1 to 4.
My thought on that is I hear what you're saying, but if I'm taking him, even where you say at 10, but if I'm taking him at 7, right now, where do you think the 7th quarterback drafted is going to be? Like round 8? Like, yeah, right. The way that it's treated. So if I'm taking him in round 8, I love that I'm getting those 16 touchdowns and a ridiculous amount of yards in the first 4 weeks. But I also love that I know I'm getting a lock for a really solid quarterback. I'm not taking any chances there where a Luck could get injured or Kirk Cousins could be the very average quarterback he was last year. I don't think that's the truth, but I'm saying that it's a lock that I'm going to have a solid quarterback. So if I'm getting a guy like that in the 7th, 8th round now, I feel great about that.
We're going to fight so much about Kirk Cousins this offseason.
I'm not saying he's going to have a bad. You just use him as an example.
Because he was 7 last year on a trash can offense.
I agree. I wasn't using it to say Kirk Cousins is going to suck this year.
I'd just say I think as a whole he's going to be a pretty big pivot point for the group this year.
I think he's going to be great.
And in fairness, to what Miles is kind of putting out there, Drew Brees was 15th in points per game among quarterbacks last year. So, you could make an argument either way. Again, it's early on. So, a lot of this is just initial opinions, but, really either side of the argument, you could make a really good case. So,
especially because it's May.
But by the way, I really don't like that points per game argument, because all that shows me is that, there were guys that had a higher points per game, but they weren't reliable for you when you needed them down the stretch because they were injured. You know what I mean? So I like to go back to what Deal said. I'm getting 16 games out of Drew Brees next year.
Right.
And they're going to be 16 very good games. They may not be the best games of Drew Brees' career, but they're 16 very good games.
You're not going to get a 120 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 picks game ever.
Nope, ever.
It's a lock. You're not getting that. South will get that only against the worst players in the league, but we're not going to get that.
Yeah. All right, let's move on here. Curious enough, again, we don't have too much deviation here. From 6 through 10, we go Andrew Luck, Kirk Cousins, Drew Brees, Deshaun Watson, Matthew Stafford to round out our top 10. Where we kind of get a little bit farther off here, and it's not by a whole ton, it's on our West Coast quarterbacks. We're talking about Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr, 15 and 16 respectively. We've got him as Jimmy Garoppolo as high as 12, as low as 16. Miles has him 12, I have 16. And then Derek Carr, Miles has him as high as 14, and I've got him at 19. So what are we kind of how do we balance this out here, I guess, is the way I want to approach this.
I think what's crazy about this is you have 2 quarterbacks and possibly heading in opposite directions here. I mean, Carr, we had, I think, as high as 10 last year at one point. And Garoppolo obviously not ranked because he was the backup quarterback for the Patriots. But, Garoppolo is on the rise with a good coach. What we think is going to be a better situation, a good running back to go with him, because we're all pretty high on McKinnon at this point, not for like a top 10 fantasy back, but as a really good compliment. So I think we see him rising, and we don't know what to expect from Carr, especially with Gruden coming to town. You got rid of Crabtree, who at least in the red zone is his favorite target. You replaced him with Jordy Nelson and Martavius Bryant. One guy's 100 and one guy is a head case by all question. I like the guy. I think he's good, but you don't know what you're going to get out of Martavius Bryant. If you tell me you do, you're lying. So, I love Amari Cooper, but we don't know where Derek Carr is going to be. And I think that what we're seeing one guy rise and one guy fall, and they're probably going to meet somewhere in that middle range.
Yeah, I'm probably a little bit low, quite honestly, on Derek Carr. And one of the things that I want to see is, does Gruden go back to kind of the approach that he always had with his quarterbacks, where he just kind of trusts them to air it out. I mean, it seems like they're building it that way. I'm not totally convinced that things are going to mesh as well as they look on paper in Oakland right now. Carr still gets knocked around quite a bit. He's still prone to a couple mistakes here and there. That's still a very tough division defensively when it comes down to those division games. So I don't know. I just feel like I want more consistency at the position with some of the guys that I have ahead there. And then for me with Garoppolo, I just want to see more, which is kind of strange for me the last couple of years because I was the person who jumped right on the David Johnson bandwagon. Like I could see 3 games and I was like, oh, whatever, I don't need to have an argument with you about how I want to see it over more time. But for some reason at the quarterback position, I'm a little more hesitant with that because I feel like once there's some tape on you, things tend to change. So, and I want to see how things work, year 2 in San Francisco. So for me, a lot of it is I just feel like the guys who I have ahead of them are just more consistent overall, not necessarily more upside.
But for me, I'm the highest in the group on both of these guys. And I think what it comes down to, especially again in May, is what's your philosophy as a fantasy player? I'm drafting for upside. I'm bored of what's your base? What's your okay, if you're consistently QB 13, I don't want to draft you at all. I have no interest in that. I would much, much rather take a chance on Jimmy Garoppolo, who my big knock on him is I don't love his weapons. I do like Dante Pettis, but who knows how quickly he assimilates into the NFL game. I love McKinnon. But Kyle Shanahan, both Kirk Cousins and Matt Ryan had their best fantasy seasons under him. And Garoppolo's now got beyond that, we say, oh, Kirk Cousins is going to have a full year in Minnesota. Well, Jimmy's got more than that because he was traded for mid-season. So I'm in love with that situation. And then I really like Carr. You're scoffing at Jordy Nelson because he's 100. Jordy Nelson scores 13, 14 touchdowns a game when he's healthy. And no, Carr is not Aaron Rodgers. So no, I don't expect 13, 14 touchdowns. Oh, a game. No, I'm sorry. That's a lot. You said that, and I was like, oh, how's it a lot? No, I'm sorry. 13, 14 a season. And yeah, it's not Rodgers, but I still love that production. I love what Martavis Bryant brings. No, it's not consistency, but it's a big, big play opportunity. Last year, that was Seth Roberts or Cordero Patterson in that role. I'll take Martavis Bryant. More importantly, what I love the most for Carr is for some reason, I don't know if like Michael Crabtree wanted to pay his bills for him, if you threw him the ball a little bit, I'll pay your electric bill this month if you give me some more targets, something like that. It made Derek Carr ignore Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is one of the 4 or 5 most talented receivers in this league. And I think now being that Cooper's the guy that Carr has the most connection with, he's going to have to give him more targets. More targets to Amari Cooper is not something I'm looking at lightly. Yeah. So I'm I hate Amari Cooper. Once Michael Crabtree left, I'm all back in on Amari Cooper, big time. And so therefore, how can you not be in on Derek Carr?
It's not that I'm not in on Derek Carr. I don't want you to get that impression. But I don't.
His receivers are 100 in a head case. How could you be in?
Yeah. What I'm saying is that there are many more question marks around Derek Carr this year than there were last year. So I can't rank him in the same. I can't put him top 12. Like it just. I have no idea what that offense is going to look like. What if John Gruden decides to bring back Charlie Garner? You know what I mean? Like I just don't know.
Charlie Garner is a great receiving guy. He's great.
I think we're ignoring that they have Griff Whalen too.
We're really not.
I think we're strategically ignoring that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like kind of the thing that held back that team last year. I mean, this time last year, we were talking about the Raiders as a Super Bowl contender. Like, are we having that conversation right now?
We should be.
I mean, maybe we should be, but the confidence isn't there. I just feel like, Carr maybe took a little bit of a step back.
The dude was healthy for 0 games last year. Yeah. Look that up. He played so hurt all year.
Yeah.
He's an injury, and he played.
In my opinion, they got better. I know Doug Martin is what he is, but he's adding to the backfield, at least taking time there. And I like Martavis Bryant. I like Jordy Nelson. Who knows how many games either one of them are going to play, or if they can put a whole season together between them. But I like the pieces they added, and we already covered that I like the pieces they added on defense. So I think they're a better team this year, and I like that for Derek Carr. That's why I have him.
Just so you know, on Tuesday nights, Deal holds the Doug Martin Truthers roundtable. So.
It's a flat table. Get it right.
Okay, flat table. Sorry. All right, so let me just recap here. At number 11, we've got Jared Goff. 12, Ben Roethlisberger. 13, Matt Ryan. 14, Phillip Rivers. 15, Jimmy Garoppolo. We're getting to number 16 through 20 here. 16, Derek Carr. 17, Jameis Winston. 18, Dak Prescott. 19, Marcus Mariota. 20, Alex Smith. I want to kind of park it on Marcus Mariota for a second. This is an interesting, case, so to speak. Here, we have a 2.5 point deviation, which is our biggest, inside the top 25 deviation that we've got. And when we talk about deviation, just to throw it out there, that's the difference in the average ranking position between the four of us. So
basically how spread apart we are.
Right. Explain the math, Miles.
Without going, hey, it's almost summer vacation, so you caught me here. No, it's basically a zero deviation means we all feel exactly the same about the guy. The higher your deviation is, an average of 16 and 16 could be different. We are further apart if a deviation is high, basically.
Right. So this is the furthest that we are apart in the top 25. So we'll talk here for a second. Rocco and I have him 16 and 17 respectively, while Deal and Miles have him in there. Number 21 for Miles, number 22 for Deal. So obviously, we're separated here. Is it crazy to think that Marcus Mariota is not a top 20 fantasy quarterback?
Yes. He was 21 last year.
No. He was. I was going to say he's 21 last year. And it was really a poor season for him, especially with the picks. He hadn't thrown that many picks in his first 2 years, and it's kind of like, I don't want to say it's an anomaly because we only have 3 years to work from, and I think he is truthfully somewhere between what we saw in 2016 and what we saw in 2017, and honestly, that lands him right at like 16 or 17 for me. That's where he is. I think he gives you a dynamic ability with his legs. I think that he will cut down on the interceptions. I think that'll be a point of emphasis for him. And as long as he cuts down on the interceptions, I'm not saying he's a top 10 quarterback. I mean, that would be ludicrous at this point. But realistically, he's somewhere between the number 13 that we saw him in 2016 and the number 21 we saw him in 2017. I don't think either of them are the norm.
I think he's actually somewhere between the 21 he was at 2017 and the 22 he was in 2015. And I did him a favor and rounded down from 21 and a half to 21. So it's actually courteous of me.
So you think that 2016 was just a complete anomaly for him?
Yep.
If all you have is 3 years to go off of, and two of them were very consistent, right, and the other one was way better or way worse, then why would you expect him to be closer to his outlier year?
I use Olympic scoring.
Here's the way I look at that. His rookie year, he didn't play every game, so he's 22, but he only played 12 games, and then in 2016, he plays all but the last game after he breaks his foot, and he finishes 13. He's up in yards, way up in touchdowns, down in interceptions, despite playing fewer games, despite playing more games, and then last year, he has a bad year in terms of touchdowns and interceptions. That's really what it boils down to.
So
but Corey Davis is getting better. You know what I mean? They've gone out and they've kind of committed to we saw I think the playoff Corey Davis that we saw is the Corey Davis that we're going to see going forward. I think that really helped him turn that corner. Maybe. And then on top of that, you've changed philosophies to some degree because you're not running Murray and Henry anymore, who are very similar runners. You're running Henry and Deion Lewis, and Deion Lewis gives you an option in the pass game, unlike anything they've had to point. So I don't know. I don't want to tear that apart, but I saw something very interesting
about how people are talking about Henry and Dion Lewis because of the size of their bodies. Dion Lewis is in between the tackles, first and second down runner. He's not James White.
Yeah. No, he's not James White, but he has more of an ability to catch the ball than either Henry or
Why? Because he's short? Because it goes on to say that Derrick Henry is a far better receiving option than Dion Lewis.
Yeah. One of my other points is that their defense is steadily getting better too. Last year they only gave up 22.3, and I think the pieces they added this season got them much better. So I don't think they're going to be throwing as much because they're not going to be as behind as much. And it's shocking to me that the Mariota we saw in college and the athlete that we thought he was going to be, that he doesn't use his feet or scrambling or get that part of his game really in. So I think he really loses a part there. That's why I have him back at 21. Just because I think that's about where he is. And last year I had him the lowest of anyone. I took a bunch of grief on here, which I just listened back to again. And I also took grief on moving Ben and Stafford and Cam and Rivers ahead of him last season. All of them finished ahead of him. And I just can't move him ahead into that gap where I have guys similar to that this season either, because they're still ahead in my mind. He hasn't done anything to catch up to them.
Look, I know that we kind of scoffed when the Titans hired Mike Vrabel, and probably rightfully so. You know, it was a very curious hire, but one of the things that I liked that he did was immediately go out and get Matt LaFleur as his offensive coordinator. LaFleur, you know, kind of came in and was a little bit of a part of this Jared Goff transition over the past couple years. And I'm not saying that he's going to come in immediately and do what he did and take, you know, the talent and mold it into, you know, that next level. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I like the chances. I like everything that they're saying about how they're going to allow Marcus to be Marcus and be a little bit more athletic and be a little bit more out there on the edge and give him that flexibility to use his feet a little bit more. And that's why I think I'm kind of bumping him up in this region ahead of some of these other guys, because if they really, truly allow him to play to his skill set, that element for fantasy purposes is going to open up things for him. Obviously, that's going to bump him up over, you know, 3 or 4 guys in this neighborhood to me and make him a more viable option to me. Now, again, we've got to wait and see if it's actually going to happen, but I'll take them at their word, at least on the surface. All right. So, you know, just rounding out the quarterback discussion here, we'll give you 21 through 25, just to round it out. 21 is Patrick Mahomes. 22, Mitchell Trubisky. Got to make sure you hit it with Mitchell. There's no Mitch. 23, Eli Manning. 24, Andy Dalton. 25, Blake Bortles. So top 25 quarterbacks there very early on in the discussion process. So let's move over to the running back position here. And I know everybody here is passionate about running backs, so I have a feeling this is going to get interesting. Surprisingly, we do have a unanimous number one. Todd Gurley and half PPR is our unanimous number one. We've got some minimal variation then through the rest of the top 5. Number 2 is Lev Bell. Number 3, David Johnson. Number 4, Ezekiel Elliott. And number 5, Kareem Hunt. Where things get a little bit more interesting is Alvin Kamara. He's coming in right now at number 7. Miles has him as high as number 4. Rocco as low as number 9. Who's wrong here?
I don't think either of us are wrong. If that
somebody
makes sense.
Has to be wrong.
Like I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up somewhere in between 4 and 9. To be honest with you, I understand the reaching for the ceiling, and I understand me being a little bit more cautious. My biggest thing with this is that, and we see this stat all the time, and Miles is actually the one that brought this to our attention last year. Touchdowns are like the only thing that are not necessarily sustainable. And usually when you have a year where you explode for 10 touchdowns or more, your next year is usually cut down drastically by, you know, anywhere from 25 to 50%. I just think that, like, for a guy who's limited on touches, and I understand he's going to get the bump for the 4 games that Ingram is out, but for a guy who's sharing touches and really is a big play monster, I can't rely on the touchdowns to make him the number 4 overall back. That's my biggest holdup. I think he's extremely, extremely special talented. I just don't know if we're going to get 10 plus touchdowns from Alvin Kamara again. And if you don't get 10 plus touchdowns, then he's a very good back, but not number 4.
So you brought up that I have him at 4th on these 2 early ranks. I had him 11th until we found out the Mark Ingram news. I had him ranked 11th, and I had Ingram like 13th. And for me, why I move him all the way up to 4 is not because I predict he'll end the season at 4, but it's because he's going to be my draft rankings number 4, because I absolutely want to take him and find that 1 or 2 owners that went 1 and 3 and need a running back, and I'm going to take your house, your kids, your dog. Wow. I'm taking everything. I'm taking everything from you for Alvin Kamara, because the first 4 weeks, you guys just convinced me that I have Drew Brees too low at QB 10, because for 4 weeks he's going to be throwing the ball around the place. Kamara is probably going to be second on the team in targets behind Michael Thomas.
Yeah, now that Willie Snead's gone.
Your boy.
Yeah.
He should absolutely, and I know what I'm about to say here, he should absolutely be RB1 or RB2 after 4 weeks.
Wow.
In fantasy scoring. Now, especially in full PPR. So I'm going to trade you for everything if I get Alvin Kamara. All that being said, I don't really see myself drafting the guy because I don't like to rely on somebody to overpay, and I don't want to be stuck with a guy that I do believe is outside of the RB1 rankings once Ingram comes back. But for me, when I'm looking at what I want to do for the public out there, have him really high when you draft.
You don't think that the person with the nice house and nice kids, the nice wife and a decent dog are going to know that Mark Ingram's coming back? Like what? Why wouldn't you take Ezekiel Elliott there then?
They have, listen, you find me one league where everybody makes rational decisions all the time, and I'll be impressed.
Do you think that in a league somebody is going to trade you? They're going 1 and 3, and they're going to trade you Ezekiel Elliott for Alvin Kamara straight up after week 4?
No, but I agree. No,
that's stupid then.
Dude, okay. You've never seen stupid things happen?
No, but it's stupid if you don't think that. Do you think that somebody would trade you Ezekiel Elliott for Alvin Kamara straight up, and they know that Mark Ingram's coming back? If you don't think that's true, why wouldn't you draft Ezekiel Elliott?
No, but
first of all, I said I will not be drafting Kamara 4th. My point is, if you know your league, the only sure bets to outscore him or possibly outscore him through 4 weeks, in my mind, are Johnson, Bell, and Gurley. That's it.
But for the season, though.
And as last year showed, who knows where it goes from there if you don't get the trade offer you want. What if Mark Ingram comes back and looks like trash the first game?
Because he's not on PEDs anymore.
Right. I think why I have him that high, honestly, I like options. I love optionality in fantasy. And it's not like I'm drafting a guy that if nobody trades for him, I'm screwed. Like I'm still pumped to have Alvin Kamara. I'm not pumped that I took him over Zeke. No, probably not. All right, but
I think you have to think about that, though. I think you need to put him. I'm not telling you what to do, but I think in my mindset is I have to put him where I think it's not going to, even if I want to trade, if that's my goal, I think I'm going to trade him like I did with Bell a couple years ago. I drafted him 100% knowing I was trading him. So I said, who are the guys that I would not trade him for, or that I think I would trade for? Well, if I can draft those guys, I want to draft those guys and know that I'm going to get them.
Yeah, I guess to Miles's point, where I like that is that yes, you may not be able to get a straight up trade for another player, but somebody's going to get socked with an injury. Somebody's going to be 1 and 3, 0 and 4, and in a total panic mode, and be willing to overpay you in just about every single league. So I do like, the thought process there. I know you can't 100% rely on that. But I think ultimately just the way that things go anymore, you're going to have options there, because if you're a smart drafter, you're also going to have options for yourself at the running back position, where if you move Kamara and you get a package deal and make your team better where it's, not as strong elsewhere, you're not going to just move him and make your team worse. So that's where I like that a little bit. I've got him at number 7. That's kind of probably, he may jump up a little bit. They came out, in the last couple of days and said that they don't expect that they're going to increase his workload while Ingram is out. I call absolute malarkey on that, because what other option do you have? This is a guy who already had 100 targets last year in the pass game, caught 81 in, he played in 16 games. Over the 16-game season, he only actually started 3 games, still had 13 touchdowns, had minimal playing time early in the season. This is a special weapon in that offense. You're going to tell me that for the first 4 games when you don't have Ingram, that you're not going to unleash this? I'm calling that out right away. I think that they're going to absolutely use Alvin Kamara as a weapon, and I personally cannot get enough of him. I don't know. Anybody else with any more thoughts on that?
No, I think I've kind of said my piece there.
The only thing I was going to add is that, yes, Neil, I agree. You're not going to be able to trade him for Zeke Elliott straight up. So why would you not draft Zeke? But I fully agree with the other two that somebody's going to overpay and you might not get Zeke. But if you're one of us drafting, you have other running backs behind Kamara, and then you turn Kamara into a wide receiver 1 and a flex, and you know in your head that his production is probably going to drop off once Ingram is back. So why are you not taking advantage of that? I don't know if I would draft him over Zeke. I already said I wouldn't put him at 4. But if I'm in the next group of running backs and I got to decide between Leo and Kamara, that's definitely a thought process that comes in my head, is I'm going to be able to turn him into something else later, where Leo is what Leo is.
I mean, I have him ahead of Leo, so I would draft him there. But
yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
All right, so the next group here, number 6, we do have Leonard Fournette, 7, Alvin Kamara, 8, Melvin Gordon, 9, Dalvin Cook, 10, Jordan Howard. Let's talk about Dalvin Cook for a second. We've got him coming in at number 9. Deal is probably the lowest on him in the group here, obviously, at number 11. Rocco's got him at 10. Myself and Miles both have him at 8. So the deviation isn't huge here, but kind of why I'm bringing this up is I'm seeing Dalvin Cook in some publications as high as number 5 pre-rank running back. Where do you stand on, not necessarily where we have him right now, but kind of where do you see his ceiling?
Oh, his ceiling 5 is not out of the question at all. I mean, it's of all the guys in that tier, it's very possible Cook plays in the best offense. And I mean, that's tough because there's a lot of really good offenses there. But if Cousins seamlessly comes in, they're one of the best offenses in the last year, without Kirk Cousins. Let's just be nice to our boy Case Keenum and say that. I mean, they didn't lose anything else. So that combined with the fact that I think he's a bell cow guy, as far as a 2018 bell cow goes, yes, Latavius Murray's going to come in and get some touches. Nobody gets all the touches except for Lev Bell. I mean, nobody does. But I think ultimately for me, 4 through 13 on our rankings list, and we kind of talked about this last week, but I can buy into that in almost any order. That's really a personal preference thing for me. I don't care that I have him at 8 and Deal has him at 11. We're both right. He belongs in that RB1 conversation. And at that point, you're drafting what you prefer. Do you like Leonard Fournette's going to get a ton of touches? He's probably going to out-touch Dalvin Cook, more than likely. I like Cook's upside. I like his receiving ability. I like his offense to score more points than the Jags. So he's going to get his big share of that. So I'm not going to pound the table for him at 8. I can see him maybe not 4th for me, but ending the season 5th. I could see it. I could see him 13th just as easily. I just think that crew is so what they are. They're featured roles in pretty good offenses.
I love Dalvin. I drafted him high last year. The two things that scare me is, one, he won't even be a full year removed from tearing up his knee, which for a running back I think is more important than anything else, because
not for Vikings running backs.
Well, for him, because of the style of runner that he is.
Right.
He's very elusive. If his knee's not 100%, that's going to make a difference. And two, I actually think I like the guy. Reason I went with a guy like Leo over him is Leo is 100% the focal point of that offense. You cannot tell me at this point 100% that Dalvin Cook is. You brought in Kirk Cousins, paid him $28 million a year. You have Thielen, you have Diggs, you have weapons, and Dalvin is the best of all of them. But Kirk Cousins could easily drop back 30 times in that offense, 30 plus times in that offense, and they wouldn't even think twice about it. So for me, I love Dalvin. I think Dalvin's a truly special running back, but I have to account for all those other things.
I think that's kind of what I meant by how you want to build your team too, though. Like, yeah, of course, Fournette is the focal point of Jacksonville's offense, and Cook is not of Minnesota's, but
one's much better offense.
Well, and Fournette, 16 out of 16 games next year is going to be the focal point of the defense, and Cook is not. So, because if they are, Kirk Cousins is absolutely, to go back to 40 minutes ago, going to throw for 5,000 yards and 30-plus touchdowns.
Right.
He just is. So, it's a matter of, Fournette's that touch is monster, but he's going to get less yards per touch than Cook is because the offense knows it's coming. You look at fantasy rosters, Fournette's 100% owned. Who else on that offense has to be even 60% owned? Now, Marquise Lee, maybe, but you're talking about on Minnesota – Cook, Thielen, Cousins, Diggs, Rudolph all need to be owned in every single fantasy league. So that's the same thing defensive coordinators are going to be stressing about all week. How do we cover all four of those guys and contain the quarterback?
Last year, he finished 10th in points per game. We already touched it. That's not always a great number, but part of the reason that it was points per game is because he didn't play all of them. And I don't expect him to explode back on the scene. Lat Murray is what he is, but he's going to steal some carries. He had almost 1,000 total yards and 8 touchdowns last year. He's top 5 backup running back in the league.
Right.
So, however, while I believe that he'll finish around number 11 overall, he'll benefit more down the stretch for your team than most of the guys around him. So if you want him, you're going to have to draft him higher than number 11. If you want him on your team, you have to draft him. He's actually the opposite of Kamara for me, where you're saying that, he might be a number 5, number 6, number 7. I'm saying Dalvin's probably going to be 10, 11, but if you want him, you got to draft him earlier than that. And you're probably going to benefit in the playoffs from it.
Well, I think right where we have him at 9 or 10 is where you're going to have to draft him in terms of running backs, and with maybe
national publications are putting him top 5 though.
Yeah.
So people are reading that.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I think when it really boils down to it, when you are ranking out and this is why we tell you guys rank your own players, because we're all different and we all have different likes and desires, but you can't read one guy who says 5 and one guy who says 11 and just automatically assume that he's 5. You have to come up with your own rankings for this very reason.
Yep.
Right. So just real quickly here, I want to take a couple seconds on this because Jordan Howard comes in at number 10. Miles has him as low as 12. Rocco's got him as high as 8. Does the fantasy community just a little too hard on Jordan Howard? Because it seems like this is a really good running back that just doesn't get a lot of love in the fantasy circles.
It's just probably how much PPR is starting to play into fantasy.
Right.
And the big question, listen, I have him 12 and I hate myself for it. That's what I'll say about Jordan Howard. I absolutely hate that he ended 12 because I went into ranking and I'm thinking, man, Jordan Howard's going to be my guy this year. I know it. And then I start doing running backs and I'm like, oh, I got to take this guy ahead of him. Because my big question is, what's Tariq Cohen's role this year? Does it expand a little bit with how good that offense is going to be? They're going to be an explosive offense. They're not going to have to try to wear you out. They're just going to be able to score. So I'm a little nervous that he loses some touches, I guess. But ultimately, your question is very fair. Jordan Howard's really good, and it goes back to what I said last question. I have him 12th. I don't care where you have 4 through 13. You're right in my books. So yeah. I have no issue with 8.
And they're gonna throw more because they can, not out of necessity this year. So
right,
it's a luxury for them this year.
And so when they run, there's less box coverage. So he's going to have more opportunities.
But he finished 12th last year, so I think it's fair. But he was 19th in points per game, which is kind of scary. And I think that he'll be around that number again. I think 12 is pretty fair. I have him at 9, but I think that anywhere in that, like you said, anywhere in that range is pretty safe.
I love Jordan Howard. Like, obviously, I have him ranked the highest. He's back-to-back 1,000 yards. What did we say last week? Only 4 guys have done that.
Yep.
Okay, so he's one of 4 guys in the league to go back-to-back 1,000. So he's dependable. He has a lot of carries, but not a ton. He's averaging 260 carries. Like, that's about, your average regular back, bell cow back, but he's not in the 300 or close to 400, carry guys. So that's a plus. And for all the reasons you like Dalvin Cook, you should like Jordan Howard because the team around him is now getting better. You know what I mean? And obviously that hurts, but it helps. So if you give him 200, if you give him his league average again, or his career average at 260 carries, it's not going to be at the 4.1 from last year. It's probably going to be closer to the 5.3 from year 1, which means more yards, which means more opportunity for touchdowns. So I'm all over the Jordan Howard train for that reason, because he's finally on a competent NFL offense. And I'm not saying a great NFL offense. I'm just saying one that doesn't look like it should be playing on Saturdays as opposed to Sundays.
We're still assuming a lot here. I agree too. I think it's a better offense. We're still assuming Mitchell Trubisky is going to take a big step. I mean, Allen Robinson is better than all the receivers they had last year combined. But we're still assuming some. We know Kirk Cousins is a really good top tier quarterback.
I don't think we need Mitchell Trubisky to be Kirk Cousins. I just think we need Mitchell Trubisky to be competent. And if you're giving him Allen Robinson you're giving him Allen Robinson and Trey Burton. Like, I think he showed enough last year to at least grow some with better weapons, because he had trash last year and he didn't look okay. Let's put it this way: the Chicago Bears, other than Jordan Howard, have the worst offense in the NFL last year in terms of players, and he was not the worst quarterback in the NFL last year by any means.
Yeah, I think we are assuming some, but I think I'm confident enough to say that they're going to be a little better.
They're definitely going to be better.
I like the fact that they bring in James Daniels for Howard here, because that's going to open things up. They've got actual, household NFL wide receivers now on the team. So that's going to help. This is a guy who had 9 rushing touchdowns last year. I expect him to go over into those double digits this year. So I like Jordan Howard. I think he's going to take the next step. And Rocco made a really good point. He doesn't have a ton of wear on the treads. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of these guys that have to be the guy, they're 320, 330, 350 carry guys. He's well below that. So I think that he's really coming into his own now. So I think he's going to be a really nice back this year. All right, let's talk about our friends at Gorb here real quickly before we talk about the wide receiver position. Look, we're getting into that time of the year where, graduation is approaching. And when you think about graduation, you think about your goals that you have out there. And this is when Gorb really went viral a couple of years ago, was really over a commencement speech. And we're reminded from our friends at Gorb that you have 2 choices in life. You could be, whether you're graduating, moving on to something else, moving into a new season in your life, you could either get hungry or you can be hungry. And getting hungry is all about finding out what motivates you, what you're passionate about, and going after it 100%, so that you don't look back a couple years from now and wish that you would have pursued those dreams and those goals that you had, and you're just feeling hungry instead. You can check them out at GHORBH.com, Gorb.com today. You could see Deal on the live video here. He's got the swag on. They've got all kinds of gear for men, for women, for kids, all different colors, all different designs. It looks good. It feels good. It's taking over social media. I noticed today I started to see some of the hashtag Gorb on my feed on social media. It's coming on strong again. Check them out, GHORBH.com. All right, we're going to round out the discussion tonight with the wide receiver position. And we've got minimal variation through the top 6 here. AB is our Antonio Brown, our clear-cut number 1 here. And again, we rank based on a half PPR. We don't get too far off anywhere else. We've got Odell Beckham Jr., number 2, DeAndre Hopkins at number 3, Keenan Allen at number 4, AJ Green at number 5. We get a little bit further off at number 6 with Michael Thomas. And this is an interesting one. Deal's got him as high as 4, Miles at 5. I've got him at 7. Rocco's got him at number 9. So Rock, what goes into the thought process here with Michael Thomas at number 9?
Not much.
No, I actually have what I think is good reasoning for this. Like, we saw him get 20 more targets last year, 20, and turn that into 15 more catches and cut his touchdowns in half. I think that he is a better player than Brandon Cooks, but I think not having Cooks' explosiveness on the outside to open things up hurts Michael Thomas. I still think he's a top 10 wide receiver. I still think he's phenomenal. He's one of my favorite guys because he is as gritty as they come. He goes over the middle. He makes all the catches. He can run all the routes. He's not just like a one-trick pony. But without having a really explosive guy on the outside at the wide receiver position, and you don't have to be a 1,000-yard receiver. You just need somebody who can like blow the top off of the defense. And at this point, I'm sorry, Ted Ginn is losing a step and can't be that guy. So I think that's where we saw the regression with Mike Thomas. And you saw his touchdowns drop by almost half from 9 to 5, even though his targets went up 20%. So for me, that's where I hold the brakes on Mike Thomas. He's still going to catch close to 100 passes. He's still going to be a 1,000-yard receiver. But what separates, your number 1, 2, 3, 4 from your 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is the touchdowns every year. It's the guys at the top score double-digit touchdowns, and I don't see Michael Thomas getting there.
Let me tell you what gives me a headache. I'm going to tell you what gives me a headache. 45 minutes ago, you told me Drew Brees is going from QB 10 to QB 6 because he's going to go back to the old Drew Brees. And now you're going to drop Michael Thomas from a down season that had him at receiver 7. He's going to go down to 9 because his touchdowns will stay low. How in God's green earth is Drew Brees going to have more touchdowns than he had last year, but Michael Thomas is not? Michael
Thomas, be a beneficiary.
He's going to be the main beneficiary by a lot. So it doesn't make any sense to me to love Drew Brees and not Michael Thomas at all. Now, I understand that you're going to twist that around on me, but I'm going to say I expect Drew Brees to do what he did last year. How would I not expect Michael Thomas to do what he did last year, except the touchdowns thing is what's fluid. How could he not catch a couple more? 104 catches and 5 touchdowns is so pathetically rare.
I understand that, but that's my whole argument is the touchdowns. I'm not arguing the catches. I'm not arguing the yards.
Where are they going to go to,
though? Touchdowns. Okay, go ahead.
He has 1 touchdown per 20 receptions. That's so rare, it's ridiculous. So to not think that will bounce back to a more normal, 1 per 14 catches or 15 catches is ridiculous. So for him to get 2 more touchdowns, that's it. Last year, he skyrockets all the way up to receiver 4. If all he does is 2 more of his catches, no more yards, nothing else, just 2 more catches go for touchdowns, he's receiver 4 last year. I guess that's my main point. To expect Brees to improve and not his main target to be the main beneficiary of it doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm just going by basic rate. He's got 14 career touchdowns on over 200 catches. That. Right. That is what it is.
Yeah, I have him at number 7, and I feel like that's probably even low at this point. And part of it is I can't get over the fact that Julio's Julio. But if I'm being fair, Michael Thomas is more likely to score the touchdowns than Julio. So maybe some of it is I just need to get out of my own head with that. I could freely admit that, but for right now, early on, I'm kind of still stuck there. That could definitely change, but I do think that Thomas is going to be the main beneficiary here, especially early on. And this is a guy who, could carry you early on in a fantasy season while the Saints have to do some different things offensively, probably have to throw a little bit more. I think he's going to see an uptick in his touchdowns early on. He's going to jump out of the gate really quick, in my opinion.
I love Michael Thomas. I don't think I need to add a lot more other than he's also fallen into that magical third-year receiver category now that they always seemingly not every third-year receiver, But most of them, and especially the elite ones, take a huge jump when we see that they're already doing pretty special things in 1 and 2, that third year becomes just a natural motion. And, I already talked about how Drew Brees is moving up for me. So he's the main reason Drew Brees is moving up.
Okay, so, we go through number 6, we've got Michael Thomas. Number 7, Julio Jones. 8, Mike Evans. 9, Devontae Adams. And number 10, T.Y. Hilton. Julio Jones, Rocco and I have got him at 6. Deal and Miles have him at number 9. I think I know where we're going to head with the answer here, but what's the thought process there at number 9?
Miles
even looking at it now, I think 6 is too high. He's the most talented, but I'm just going to give you one stat that I just looked up, and it's just so shocking to me. The guy doesn't score touchdowns because they ignore him. It's like he has 43 touchdowns in 95 games. Okay. Odell Beckham has 38 and 47 games.
Right.
Like half the amount of games and 7 less touchdowns. And they just ignore him, and it doesn't make any sense. It's no
definitely
logic.
not a talent thing.
It's not a talent.
And what I'll add from my own research to that today, of his career 43 touchdowns, 18 of them were in his first 2 years. He went 8 and 10 his first 2 years. Since then, the last 5 seasons, he has 25 touchdowns. Crazy. 5 per year on 452 catches. That's an insane rate. Insane. It's like 1 out of every 19 catches is going for a touchdown.
So basically like what Michael Thomas does.
What Michael Thomas did last year, yes.
But
not over a 5-year span.
But tell me you won't take Drew Brees 100 times out of 100 over Matt Ryan. Right. So we got to figure this out here.
I love him like crazy. I always have. I fought tooth and nail. I had him receiver 1 last year, pre-ranked. Even though that was stupid last year, I still did it. I just can no longer, in good conscience, put him up there with elite players. To put it in perspective, now listen, if anyone's putting him with Antonio Brown at this point as a fantasy receiver, that's you're the problem here. But to put his 1 touchdown per 19 catches in that same 5-year span, Antonio Brown a touchdown every 11 catches.
Crazy.
And it's not like
and he's sustaining it
because, well, yeah, it's not that Ted Ginn he scores once every 6 catches. Well, no, Antonio Brown's averaging like 111 catches over those 5 years. It's not like he's only catching touchdowns. The guy's doing it all the time. So to even sort of put him, you just talked about Odell, and we just saw what Hopkins can do with Deshaun Watson, or really anybody but Brock Osweiler. You just saw what Keenan Allen's back to put him with the guys that are consistently matching him in catches close to his yardage, because Julio's still ridiculous on yardage. He always will be. But matching his catches close to his yardage, but way more consistent touchdown catchers, it makes no sense to me to pre-rank him there. Listen, are any of us going to be shocked if he scores 18 times this year? No, because he should. He should score 18 times every single year.
Should be the norm.
He just doesn't. And it's part his fault, mostly not his fault, but it just doesn't happen with him.
I think it's like 0 his fault. I'm going to be honest with you.
He dropped like 2 last year. So I'll give him a little tiny bit his fault.
I'll also add, you said about Odell, AB, Nuck, and Keenan. I'll also add AJ Green gets a red rifle back this year. T.Y. Hilton gets Andrew Luck back this year. Mike Evans and the Bucks I expect to be back. So that's the range he falls in. The only thing we say the normal guys that should be there, 1, 2, and 3 are those guys I listed all have things swinging in their direction and should be back to their norms. The only thing that happened for Julio is they went ahead and drafted a really good receiver in the first round, and he gets Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman back for all 16 games, assumedly this year. So the only things that happen to him are negative things. So I just don't see a way to put him up there with those guys.
I don't think Calvin Ridley is a negative thing. I think it's going to open up some opportunities for him, which might sound a little nutty, but I actually think Julio this year may inch more toward that double digit. I don't think he's going to get it, but
double digits one time.
I think he could be an 8 touchdown guy this year. He's
had more than 6 3 times.
I just look, number 6 right now. I love what they did on offense. I'm not sure how you cover what they're going to throw out there offensively.
You can't.
And I think that it opens up some things for him. I mean, I might be a fool to think that right now, but from everything that I've read and heard, they want to make it a point to get him more involved in the red zone.
You read that last July and last August, because that's when they said it. They said he was going to be the number one red zone target on the team. He scored 3 touchdowns, and one of them was from Mohamed Sanu for like 50 yards out.
It was and it wasn't a red zone target.
No,
it was like 60-yard throw.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, early on, I tend to, buy into some of the things that I read. This will thin out throughout the summer, obviously. When we're talking July 1st, I could be somewhere totally different on them based on what I've seen coming through, mini camps and things like that. But I think it's a good thing to add Ridley. I really do. I think it puts a legitimate threat. I think it will be. I mean, I could be wrong, obviously, but that's kind of where I'm leaning right now. So, all right, another area where I'm prepared to get roasted here is T.Y. Hilton. I know, in this group, it's not going to be very popular, but we've got him at number 10. Deal's got him 8. Miles and Rocco at number 10. I've got him at number 15. And the biggest reason, and, honestly, for nothing else, it's just that he doesn't score the touchdowns and he doesn't have that, high, upper double-digit potential touchdown, in my opinion, because he's not a factor in the red zone at all. So it's got to be the deep ball. His 5, 6, 4 touchdowns the last couple of years. I get that Luck has not been there, but even when he had his 1,448 yards, 6 touchdowns, I feel like that's kind of the outlier for me. I get that Luck is coming back. I don't expect that right out of the gates, Luck is going to be himself and just have this chemistry with him. I think it's going to be a little bit of a slower build personally. You don't just go as long as Andrew Luck has gone, not really even throwing the Duke, so to speak. Not having time to continue your chemistry with TY. The rest of the receiving core, I don't know how much I love it, to not be able to kind of single out Hilton, but I think he's just going to be too dependent on those deeper balls. And that's kind of why I've got him down below a lot more of these guys who are starting to catch a lot more touchdowns in the top 15.
That seems fair. I think the only way I'll answer it is when I do the rankings, here in May, I always just assume everyone's back and everyone's healthy and everyone's normal. If it comes down to training camp time and Luck doesn't look good or still isn't throwing in practice, well then yeah, I think even 15 for you is a little bit nice for TY. But the reason I put him 10 is I do agree with the touchdown thing, but he has easily 1,600 yard upside if Andrew Luck plays all year.
And 120 receptions.
Yeah, I mean he can. I think they only touched what they can do in 2016. Now, that being like 12 touchdowns, we're never going to see that out of T.Y. Hilton. It's just not his game. It's not going to be. It's not Andy's game. He looks for his tight ends in the red zone. He always has. So, I that being said, he's still a receiver 1 for me if Luck is there because of the catches and yards. It's just kind of, I mean, I have him right behind Julio because I view them as the same player. They're both going to put up catches. They're both going to put up yards. They're not going to have the touchdowns, and Julio's a better player. So they're 9 and 10.
Yeah. And not to say that I didn't assume that Luck was going to be healthy. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to play right away. I just think it's not going to be as
ease him in a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a little bit more choppy to start. So I think that's going to kind of put a little bit of a hit on things here for T.Y. Hilton for me. So. All right, number 11, we've got Adam Thielen, 12, Alshon Jeffrey, 13, Allen Robinson, 14, Tyreek Hill, number 15, Doug Baldwin. Allen Robinson is our number 13 guy. He's as high as number 10 to deal. Miles has him at 12. Rocco's got him 15. I've got him down at 18. I have my reasons, but I'm kind of curious from Deal's perspective at number 10. Allen Robinson as a wide receiver 1, you feel pretty good about it.
I feel great about it. I've said since Allen Robinson came into the league, I've said since Allen Robinson was at Penn State that I think he's one of the most talented guys. And when I was at Penn State, I said I think he's going to be one of the most talented guys. I still believe that. Now, I know backtracking to where I said we're not sure that Chicago's offense is going to be much better because that runs through Mitchell Trubisky. I tend to believe that it is going to be much better. We're still not sure, but I'm hedging my bets towards it is, and towards Allen Robinson is the reason it will be better. Mitchell Trubisky can still be a middle-of-the-road quarterback because Allen Robinson's that good, and he's still going to be the guy that takes the lion's share. There's no reason he shouldn't see 120, 130 targets, and there's no reason he shouldn't catch 100 of those. So unless it's just Mitchell Trubisky can't get it close to anybody, which we didn't see that last year. He got it close to guys, and they couldn't catch the ball. So he's going to catch those balls. And when he is put in a position where, can Mitchell Trubisky be as good as Blake Bortles? I think so, because I think most people can. So he's going to be back in that same range for me when I was putting him up 5, 6, 7. That's the range he should be in as far as talent goes.
Do you think that Allen Robinson is in the same level as Nook?
I think he's just behind.
So basically, you're saying that if Allen Robinson played in an offense with a top quarterback, he would be your probably number 5 wide receiver.
Number four. Yep.
Okay. And I think I agree with that. I just wanted to see if we were all on the same page. Because, if Mitchell Trubisky is a middle-of-the-line quarterback, then Allen Robinson is top 10. If Mitchell Trubisky is good, then Allen Robinson is top 7.
Yeah. Years ago, he had 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. There's no reason to think he can't go back to that. He's the same guy, and he's getting a good quarterback.
That's the reason I have him as high as I do. I have him 12, but even just going with R13, in most leagues, that's like 4th, 5th, 6th round is where receiver 13 is going to come off the board. And if Trubisky, I personally, the Bears are a sneaky team for me this year. I really like the offense. I think, it's an easy equation to make with him and Jared Goff last year, with Trubisky and Jared Goff, because they got the young upstart offensive genius. They have a great run game. They picked up some receiving options. The line got better. Now, I don't know if he's going to be Jared Goff, but the Bears thought so. They took him second.
But tell me Allen Robinson isn't better than anybody that the
by a lot. And listen, people were going to chuckle, oh, Trubisky's second pick, ha, ha, ha. Well, we laughed at Jared Goff last year when he was coming off of his rookie season. So it's an easy parallel to make. But for me, if Trubisky does take a Goff-esque leap, Allen Robinson's a top 3 receiver in fantasy. So for me to get that in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, look, I've got him at 18, and I just, again, for me, this is an instance where I feel more confident in the players that I put ahead of him right now. I love his talent level. I'm just not sure at all that I'm sold yet that the Bears, number one, are going to be committed to really throwing the ball that much. They are a run team, at least historically over the last couple of years. You do have Jordan Howard. You do have Tariq Cohen now to kind of get into things as well. You added Trey Burton to be more of your intermediate guy, your over-the-middle guy. You've added some different weapons. But it looks to me like the approach is that they want to run the ball first based on what they're trying to do and build up front. So that's kind of what scares me a little bit, because I'm not sure that he's going to have – I know he's the number one option, but I'm not sure that's necessarily going to equate to the touchdowns that he's really going to need to really jump into that wide receiver 1 stratosphere for me. We talked about, kind of joking about Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles played really, really, really well in 2015 when Allen Robinson had that season. So we're asking a considerable jump out of Mitchell Trubisky to get him back there. Otherwise, we're looking at more of a 2016 Allen Robinson with 883 yards and 6 touchdowns. I feel like it's somewhere in the middle, but I just don't think he's going to have that touchdown threat yet, because I'm not entirely sold on the Bears offense, at least not as much as some other people are. So maybe Trubisky will prove me wrong, but I don't know. I just don't see him taking that jump quite yet.
Yeah, it has. Your ranking of Allen Robinson has to be directly tied to how you feel about the Bears. It just makes no sense to just say, oh, he's really good. He's 10th for me, but the Bears are going to suck. Like, that's stupid. Right. It is tied to Trubisky's growth and their gelling, because I do, in spite of the fact that I have him at receiver 12, I do think they're still a run first team. I just think that actually helps Robinson, because I do have the faith in Adam Gase and in Trubisky that the Bears will be good, and therefore those opportunities to score are still going to be there, in part because of the running game. So it makes perfect sense that you have him lower, because you just don't, or it's not that you don't see it, but you just want to see it before you believe.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'd rather be much more conservative than, jump in on Mitchell Trubisky at this point for me. So
fair enough.
All right. So go ahead.
I was just going to correct Miles. He said Adam Gase, but he meant Matt Nagy.
Yeah.
I like to make sure that we correct ourselves on stuff like that.
Right.
All right. So the last thing that we're going to talk about here, and this is just going to be kind of a fun thing, because, we round out the number 16, Larry Fitzgerald, 17, Jarvis Landry, 18, Brandon Cooks, 19, Josh Gordon, 20, Amari Cooper. But I'm jumping all the way down. We've got a number 30, Will Fuller. 33, 32, 33 for, Deal, myself, and Miles. Rocco's got Will Fuller number 21 in the rankings, which creates the biggest deviation of anybody we've talked about tonight at 4.4. I'm just kind of curious. Like, it's not necessarily going to be like a pile on Rocco thing, although I would be the advocate for that. But what's the thought process there with Will Fuller as a borderline wide receiver 2?
When he and Watson are both healthy, it is a difference maker. I understand he's the second fiddle behind Nook, and rightfully he should be. But when they're both playing together and they're both healthy, it's magical. It really is. He finished number 30 overall receiver last year in our scoring, so that was full PPR, and I get that. But he finished number 30 overall. He only played 10 games and only had Watson for 4 of those 10 games. Okay? In those 4 games with Watson, 13 catches, 279 yards, 7 touchdowns. In the 6 games without him, 15 catches for 144 yards and no touchdowns. If we're assuming that Deshaun Watson is going to be healthy and back, and we're assuming that Will Fuller is going to stay healthy and be the number 2 wide receiver there, then Will Fuller is absolutely, in my mind, a legitimate, viable number 2 wide receiver, because he has the talent to be one of the best number 2 wide receivers in the league, and his quarterback loves him.
Yeah, I think actually what's fair is your argument itself is solid, and I'll even bring something in that Deal said, like, that's another 30-year receiver situation. So things are going to come easily. The reason I actually kind of thought that I was going to be high on him at 32, because I feel like that's kind of pre-rankings wise. I think that's a little bit nice, because I think what he did last year was magical, and it was actually really fun to watch. But 1 touchdown per 2 catches is not duplicable. Like, I'm going to crush the other guys for not being closer to 1 every 2, but nobody's sticking with 1 every 2 catches. It's just not happening.
I understand. But even if he gets another 4 games and only scores 2 more touchdowns, he's still a top flight option for a wide receiver 2, because he's still going to wind up with double-digit touchdowns. He's not going to wind up with 15 touchdowns on the season. I get that. But 10's a realistic number for him, because he is that guy for them.
Right.
For the exact reason why you don't like T.Y. Hilton because of the touchdowns, well, Will Fuller is that guy for them. He catches long touchdowns. He catches short touchdowns. Like, Watson likes to throw to him.
He's Deshaun Jackson from a couple years ago. I mean, I'm not saying Deshaun Jackson last year. I mean, when Deshaun Jackson was making plays for the Eagles, Fuller could very well hit 65 catches, like 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. And that's a really good year. And it's one of those things where, like, if that's his floor, then drafting him where the 3 of us have him ranked is a gift. I mean, that's amazing, because then he ends up being in your lineup every single week. And I guess for me, like, I'm definitely not going to pick on you, because if he finishes receiver 21, I'd be 0% surprised. I'm just definitely not going to be able to draft him there. And he's kind of one of those guys that I'll be happy to have him, but I can't take him in the 6th round, 7th round.
This is one of those guys, and I know we have this internal argument all the time, but this is one of those guys where when you start ranking like wide receivers 20 to 32, I'm ranking them based on who do I rather have. Do I want the upside of Will Fuller, or do I want the mediocreness of Marvin Jones? And like maybe that's just like, maybe that's a bad example because I don't think Marvin Jones is
really good.
he's good, but like he's not
number 5 last year.
He's not special. You know what I mean? Like
I don't know. Disagree, but I understand your ultimate point.
Yes,
not to bash on Marvin Jones.
I can go through our list and pick somebody else in that range,
right.
but
as long as you don't say hey, we're good.
Do I want him? Okay, here's a great example. Do I want Will Fuller or do I want Robert Woods?
Well, right. What about this one then? Because you have Stephon Diggs right behind him at 22. So a gun to your head, you'll take Will Fuller over Stephon Diggs?
Gun to my head, I don't know if I take him over Diggs, but the problem with Diggs is that there's right now you have Hopkins and you have Fuller, and I really think those are the 1-2 option on that team. I don't think they're consistent. I don't think they care about the running back. I don't think they care about their tight end. Like Lamar Miller was supposed to be the end all be all for them, and he had a very average season last year. I think Diggs suffers because Thielen is good. Rudolph is good. Dalvin's going to be back in a big way. You already said that even with Dalvin back, you think Murray's going to be back in a big way. So is Diggs the second option on his team, or is he really like the 4th or 5th option on his team? So gun to my head, Diggs is the safer bet, but if I already have 2 wide receivers, I might take Fuller over Diggs because of ceiling.
It could very well be one of those situations where you're on draft day and you've got to look at the composition of your team so far.
Yeah,
can you take a shot?
Yeah, like
a guy who may never see your lineup but may finish in the top 10.
I'll put it this way: if I only have 1 wide receiver, I'd probably take Diggs. But if I already have 2, I'm taking Will Fuller.
Right.
Yeah, and that's really the reason why I brought this up, because this is interesting conversation at this point in the year. It just shows you the depth of what you really need to be thinking about, even this early on, quote unquote, so to speak, in the process. But we're inching closer and closer to fantasy season here. We're gonna have a lot more stuff to cover over the next couple of weeks and months. We'll get way more in depth position by position. We really just kind of wanted to whet everybody's appetite tonight with a little bit of some way too early fantasy rankings. I think it kind of accomplished that. We had some good conversation, brought up some good points. So definitely keep it locked for a lot more to come over the next couple of weeks and months. That is going to do it for this week's edition of the show. Make sure you're keeping up with us. Facebook.com/footballgoons, @footballgoons on the Twitter. Right here on our YouTube channel, you can subscribe, you can comment, you can like our videos, and we'll be sure to react and respond to your comments as well. Make sure you're keeping it locked to footballgoons.com all off season, because we don't take an off season. We're going to continuously have fantasy football content building up more and more over the next couple of weeks. We have some really fun podcasts planned. Our rankings are going to be updated continuously throughout the next couple months as well. So you're going to want to make sure you're checking out footballgoons.com. We're looking forward to a great summer. We'll catch you guys next time.